The diagnosis came on a Thursday afternoon. I remember that because Thursdays used to be my longest days. Board calls in the morning, strategy meetings after lunch, dinners I rarely attended at home. Now Thursday is the day my neurologist looked at me with a kind of practiced sadness and said the words glioblastoma multiforme, as if they were already familiar to me. They weren't. He explained it slowly. Aggressive, inoperable, limited time. Treatments could slow it, not stop it. Months, maybe longer if I was lucky. I nodded like a man used to receiving bad numbers. That's what 45 years of corporate life does to you. It trains you to stay calm while something important is being taken away. But this wasn't a bad quarter. This was my future being shortened with clinical precision. I didn't cry in the office. I didn't ask why me. I didn't raise my voice. I shook his hand, thanked him for his honesty, and asked when treatment would start. Then I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection for a long time. I looked exactly the same. Same tailored suit, same face people trusted, same man who signed off on decisions affecting hundreds of employees. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in my life, there was an expiration date I couldn't negotiate. On the drive home, I noticed things I had never noticed before. A woman laughing alone in her car. A man walking his dog slowly, like he had nowhere else to be. The way the light hit the windshield just before sunset. It felt obscene that the world was still operating normally. I told my wife that night. We sat on the edge of the bed, knees touching, like teenagers who didn't know what came next. She didn't say much. She just held my hand harder than she ever had. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the time I'd spent preparing for a future that no longer existed. Retirement plans, career milestones. Someday collapsed in less than 10 minutes inside a neurologist's office. A week later, I started forgetting words. Small things at first, common nouns. Names I should have recalled instantly. I'd pause mid-sentence, reach for a word that had always been there, and feel nothing but static. That terrified me more than the word terminal. Because I wasn't just losing time, I was losing access to myself. Before the diagnosis, I believed my value lived in my mind. My ability to think clearly, decide quickly, lead confidently. Now the very thing that made me me was under attack. That realization stripped away something I didn't even know I was wearing. My job placed me on medical leave. Flowers arrived. Emails filled with phrases like thoughts and prayers, inspiration, fighter. I appreciated the concern, but it all felt strangely distant. Because while everyone else was talking about strength, I was learning about fragility. One afternoon, my son came home from school and sat across from me at the kitchen table. He's 12, old enough to understand something was wrong, too young to understand how final it was. He watched me struggle to open a bottle of pills and said, very quietly, "Dad, are you still you?" That question broke something open inside me, because I didn't know the answer. I had spent my life being admired for what I did. Now I had to confront who I was when doing was no longer possible. The headaches came next, then the fatigue, then the way days blurred into each other, and somewhere in that blur, a memory surfaced. Years ago, during a rare vacation, I'd sat on a beach watching my daughter build a sandcastle. She kept calling my name, asking me to look. I kept saying, "Just a second." I don't remember ever looking. That memory arrived uninvited and wouldn't leave. As my world grew smaller, my awareness grew sharper. I started noticing the quiet heroics I had ignored my entire life. The nurse who learned my routine so she wouldn't wake me unnecessarily. The neighbor who mowed my lawn without asking. The friend who sat with me for an hour without trying to motivate or fix me. None of them were trying to matter. And yet they mattered more than anyone who had ever applauded me. One evening, my daughter sat on the floor at the foot of my bed doing homework. She didn't say much. She just wanted to be close. Out of nowhere, she said, "Dad, does anything we do actually matter? Like, really?" I recognized the question immediately, because I'd been asking it my entire life, just with better vocabulary and a higher salary. I wanted to give her a confident answer, but what came out was honesty. I told her I didn't think mattering worked the way we'd been taught. I told her that most of what I'd chased suddenly felt like noise, and that scared me. Because if I had been wrong about what mattered, then I had been wrong for a very long time. That night, after everyone went to sleep, I sat alone in the living room, listening to the refrigerator hum, feeling the dull pressure behind my eyes, and realizing something quietly devastating. I had built my life around being important, but importance disappears the moment you can no longer perform. And that's when the real questions begin. The first thing people don't tell you about brain cancer is this: you're aware of what you're losing. It's not like a light switching off. It's more like standing in a room where the furniture keeps being rearranged while you're not looking. You know something's wrong, but you can't always explain what. Some days I wake up clear, focused, almost normal. I read a few pages of a book and think, maybe they're wrong. Maybe I'll be the exception. Other days I can't follow a simple conversation without getting exhausted. I lose track of time. I forget why I walked into a room. I start sentences with confidence and end them in silence. And that's when the fear hits. Not fear of dying, fear of becoming invisible while still alive. Before the diagnosis, my calendar controlled my worth. Every hour accounted for, every minute productive. Now entire afternoons disappear, and in that emptiness, memories return. Not the impressive ones, the small ones. I remember a janitor at my first job who used to bring donuts on Fridays. I don't remember his last name. I remember how he always asked how my mother was doing when she was sick. I remember brushing past him every morning, thinking I was late for something important. I was wrong. I used to believe mattering meant scale. How many people you reached, how many decisions carried your signature, how far your influence traveled. But influence evaporates the moment you're no longer useful. Presence doesn't. One afternoon during radiation, a volunteer sat with me while my wife ran an errand. She was an older woman, soft voice, no clipboard, no questions. She just sat for 40 minutes. At the end, she asked if I wanted water. That was it. And yet when she left, I felt less alone than I had in weeks. I couldn't tell you her name, but I'll remember how she made the room feel. That's when it started to become painfully clear. The moments that stay are rarely the ones we plan. As my speech slowed, people around me started finishing my sentences. At first, I appreciated it. Later, it hurt. Because every interrupted sentence felt like another small erasure. I wanted to say, "I'm still here," but I didn't always have the words. That's when my wife started waiting. She stopped rushing me, stopped correcting, stopped filling the silence. She let the gaps exist. That was love in its most honest form, not efficiency, patience. Before all this, patience was something I demanded from others. Now it's something I receive like a gift. There was a night I woke up disoriented, convinced I was late for a meeting that hadn't existed in months. I panicked. My heart raced. I couldn't find my phone. My son came into the room half asleep. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just sat next to me and said, "It's okay, Dad. You're home." That sentence did more to ground me than any medication. And I realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. If my worth had truly lived in my intellect, I would already be gone. But it didn't. It lived in something quieter, something sturdier. The way my presence calmed a child, the way my absence would now be felt. I started noticing how often people apologize for being ordinary. "I'm sorry. I know this probably doesn't matter. I'm sure you're too busy. I won't take much of your time." Time. I used to guard it like currency. Now I give it away without hesitation. Because time, I've learned, is not valuable when it's full. It's valuable when it's shared. One day my daughter brought me a stack of old notebooks she found in the garage. Notes from meetings, goals, 5-year plans. I flipped through them slowly, page after page of ambition, and not a single mention of how I wanted to make people feel. That realization sat heavy in my chest. Because while my memory is beginning to fail, my emotional recall has sharpened. I may forget dates, I may forget words, but I remember kindness. I remember neglect. I remember who stayed. The doctors talk about decline like it's a schedule. Weeks, months, stages. But what's actually happening is a narrowing. Life zooms in. The big picture dissolves. And what's left are faces, voices, moments. I used to believe the purpose of life was to build something lasting. Now I think it's to be something steady. Someone people can lean on, even briefly, even quietly. I don't know how much of my mind I'll keep. That scares me. But I know this. If the last thing I'm able to do is hold someone's hand without words, that will still matter. Because mattering was never about being exceptional. It was about being real. And real doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. There are mornings now when I wake up and need a few seconds to understand where I am. The ceiling looks unfamiliar. The room feels borrowed. And for a brief moment, I'm not sure if the life I lived was real or something I imagined. Then my wife speaks my name, and everything snaps back into place. That's what anchors me now. Not facts, not memories, not achievements. Connection. The doctors warned me this would happen. That confusion would come and go. That the tumor would press where it wanted, indifferent to who I had been. They talk about it clinically. I experience it personally. Some days I can still speak clearly. Other days my thoughts feel like they're moving through water. I search for words and find echoes instead. But something strange has happened as my cognition weakens. My awareness has sharpened. I no longer think in terms of someday. There is only now. And now is astonishingly full. A hand on my shoulder. The weight of a blanket. The sound of someone breathing nearby. These things never made it onto my radar before. They do now. A few weeks ago, I asked my wife if people would remember me. She didn't answer right away. She said, "They'll remember how you made them feel." That sentence settled into me like truth does, quietly, without argument. I used to think legacy was something you left behind. Now I understand it's something you leave inside people. And you do it without knowing, without trying, without ever seeing the final result. There was a man who used to sit in the chair next to me during treatment. We never talked much, just nodded, shared space. One day he squeezed my arm before leaving and said, "Thanks for sitting with me all those weeks." I didn't know I had been doing that. I thought I was just trying to get through the day. That's the lie we've been sold. That mattering is intentional, strategic, visible. It's not. It's accidental. It's quiet. It's often invisible to the person doing it. I think about the people who mattered most in my life, and almost none of them were impressive on paper. They were present. They noticed. They stayed. They didn't rush me. My son still sits with me some nights. We don't talk much. He scrolls on his phone. I watch him exist. One night he looked up and said, "I'm glad you're my dad." That's it. That's the whole sentence. I've closed billion-dollar deals that didn't land as hard as that. If you're still healthy, still busy, still convinced, your life will start making sense later. Listen to me. Later is a lie. Later is how we postpone attention. Later is how we miss our own lives. Mattering isn't something you achieve after you've done enough important things. It's something you practice while doing ordinary ones. When you listen instead of interrupt. When you choose patience over efficiency. When you show up even though you're tired. When you treat someone like they're not invisible. I'm not special. I didn't discover a secret. I just ran out of time to lie to myself. If I could answer the question my daughter asked me, does anything we do actually matter? This is what I'd say. Yes. But not the things you think, not the things you're chasing. What matters is who would notice if you weren't there. What matters is who feels steadier because you exist. What matters is the difference between your presence and your absence in a room. That's it. That's the measurement. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to speak, or remember, or recognize the people I love. But I know this, even if everything else fades, the way I made people feel will remain. And that's enough. That's more than enough. If you're watching this and wondering whether your life counts, stop asking if you're impressive. Ask if you're honest. Ask if you're present. Ask if you're kind when it costs you something. Because when the noise falls away, that's all that's left, and it turns out, it was always enough.